right, in this video, we're going to continue to factor trinomials. So let's get started. The first thing I want you to look at in any factoring problem is if there's a common factor. So if you look at this trinomial, you'll see that there is not one. You have coefficients of 2, 3, and -9. They don't have a common factor. And the first two share an x for a variable, but the last one does not. So there is not a common factor, which leads us to an interesting place because now there's still a number in front of the x squared. And so we're going to use a different method to factor this than in a previous example or previous video. So this is when you have a number greater than 1 as the leading coefficient, I'm going to teach you a method. It's generally called slide and divide. That's what textbooks may call it. I've kind of borrowed another little acronym about Swedish fish. Okay, so this is the candy Swedish fish, and I'm going to use these letters up top here to kind of walk you through the steps of factoring these kind of problems, specifically when there's a number greater than 1 as the leading coefficient. So I will walk you through this, and at the end of the video, I will list all of these steps out for you to copy down in your notes for your reference. All right, so let's get started. The first S stands for, and actually the whole acronym stands for Swedish fish don't really swim. So if you're in my classroom the day I teach this, we actually get the candy Swedish fish and I pass them all out, and I try to convince my students that these little pieces of red candy are real fish, and we throw a bunch of them in a glass of water and they all sink to the bottom. And so we have this acronym, Swedish fish don't really swim. That kind of helps us get through this problem. Okay, the S stands for slide and multiply. There wasn't really an M, so we just kind of put those together. What we're going to do is we're going to take this leading coefficient. This is the number that makes this factoring problem a little harder than what we've done before. And I want you to literally pick it up and slide it to the very end of the trinomial and multiply it times that number. And then I want you to rewrite the trinomial. So we'll have x squared plus 3x, and now it's minus 18. Okay, the F stands for factor. Okay, now I want you to factor this basic trinomial. Okay, how we do that is draw 2 parentheses. Okay, we're going to unfoil it, and so this is x and x. And then 2 numbers that multiply to -18 and add to +3 would be +6 and -3. Okay? All right, D stands for divide. Okay? And this step right here, the divide step, it undoes the trick. So we did something that really was just not legal in the algebra. We took the 2 here and we multiplied times the 9 to get this completely different trinomial. And so to undo that multiplication, we are going to divide by 2. We're going to divide this 18 by 2, but now the 18 has been split into the 3 and the 6. So we are going to divide both of these by 2, and really it's just a matter of putting a fraction bar and 2 underneath those 2 numbers. Okay. The R stands for reduce, and I'll go ahead and say reduce the fractions. Okay. Right here you can see that 6/2 can reduce to a whole number, so I'm going to go ahead and rewrite the x plus 3. And 3 over 2, we could simplify it to a decimal, but let's not. Let's just say right now it cannot be simplified. So we'll just move on to the last step. If you have a fraction that cannot be simplified, like this 3 over 2, that's when you use the very last step, which is called swing. And we're going to swing the denominator number to sit in front of the x. Okay? So we're just going to move this 2 and sit it up front to get 2x minus 3. Okay? I know that seems like a lot of steps, but the more you practice it, the better it will get. But this is your final answer. X plus 3 times 2x minus 3. Okay, so let's do that again using the same method. Always the first thing I want you to do is check for a greatest common factor. Our coefficients are -2, 5, and 3, and they do not have anything in common. And each of the terms, not all of them have x. And so when we're in a situation like this where we still have a leading coefficient that is not 1, then we need to use a different method than just the what multiplies to 3 and adds to 5 method, because that's not going to work with this kind of problem. Okay, we're going to follow the same steps that we just did before. So let's get started. The first S stands for slide and multiply. So this -2, and we are going to take the negative with us the whole time. We're going to pick it up and slide and multiply it times the +3. That leaves us with x squared plus 5x minus 6. Okay, the F stands for factor. So now because there's not a leading coefficient, right here, we can ask ourselves two numbers that multiply to -6 and add to +5. Okay, in this case it would be, looks like it would be -1 and +6. This one's really tricky because when I do this problem with my own students, it's really easy to use the factors of 6 of 2 and 3. But because we need a +5, we need a really big positive number. So this is why 6 and -1 is what we're going to use this time. All right, D stands for divide. Now remember, you're always going to divide by what you multiplied by. So since you multiplied by -2, you're going to divide by -2. R stands for reduce the fraction. Right here, we are going to leave this fraction alone, the 1/2. Even though it's a negative over a negative, let's just keep it like that for right now. 6 over -2, it reduces to a whole number. Okay, so it's x minus 3. And we are going to swing the denominator out front. It's -2x minus 1. Okay. In my class, I'm okay with that factor having a negative as the leading coefficient. So you'll just have to check with your teacher, but this is a suitable answer for this problem. Okay guys, let's do one more problem together. Same drill. I'm going to ask you the same question. Let's look for a common factor first. Anytime that your coefficients are a little bigger than what they are usually, it could be a sign that you do have a common factor. So if you look at these numbers, the coefficients are 14, -21, and -35. Those are all multiples of 7. And so 7 is going to be our common term. And then even though 2 of the terms have x for the variable, since that last one does not, we can't use x as a common factor. So before we even work through our Swedish fish acronym, we're going to first take out the 7. So we'll have 7 on the outside, This is 2x squared minus 3x minus 5, close parentheses. Okay, I like to remind my students to bring this 7 down to the bottom and go ahead and draw your 2 parentheses, because it's very easy to forget that you've already factored out that 7. So just having it down here at the bottom, and then now we're going to figure out what are these 2 other factors. So the final answer will have 3 factors altogether. Okay, just this middle part, this is where we're going to do, we're going to work through our steps again. So we're going to pick up 2 and slide it over to -5 and multiply. This x squared minus 3x minus 10. Okay, and then we're going to factor this right here. 2 numbers that multiply to -10 and add to -3 would be a -5 and a +2. Next, you're going to divide. You're going to always divide by the number that you multiplied. So we multiplied by a +2, so we divide by a +2. Okay, next you're going to reduce the fraction. If there's any fraction you can reduce, 5 over 2 does not reduce, but 2 over 2 does, to x plus 1. And then if you still have a denominator, you're going to swing the denominator to sit right in front of the x. So this would be 2x minus 5. Okay. It's very tempting to stop right there and forget about your 7. This is why I like for you to get into the habit of bringing it down to the bottom, to be like, oh yeah, that's right, we already pulled out a 7, and so I'm just going to rewrite those factors that we just found. And this will be your final answer. Okay, your turn. Pause this video, and I want you to try some of these problems on your own.